Before Tracy Morgan became a comedy legend and Jim Breuer perfected his Joe Pesci impression on SNL, they battled each other in Yo Mama contests on a groundbreaking Harlem comedy show that aired at midnight, featured a legendary hip-hop DJ scratching between sketches, and launched more comedy careers than anyone could have imagined, all while being produced by the same Emmy-winning mastermind behind The Carol Burnett Show. Fact 1. Only 2 white performers broke the color line. In the early 1990s, when most sketch comedy shows on television featured predominantly white casts with maybe 1 or 2 black performers sprinkled in for diversity, Uptown Comedy Club flipped the script entirely. The show, filmed in the heart of Harlem in New York City, featured a cast of mostly black comedians performing sketches, stand-up, and musical performances that reflected their experiences and perspectives. But in this predominantly African-American ensemble, 2 white performers managed to break through and become regular cast members, Jim Breuer and Rob Magnotti. This reverse dynamic was extremely unusual for the time period. While shows like Saturday Night Live and In Living Color were beginning to diversify their casts, they still maintained white majorities. Uptown Comedy Club took a different approach, centering black voices and hip-hop culture while allowing Breuer and Magnotti to contribute as minority members of the troupe. It was a bold statement about representation, especially for a show airing in first-run syndication during a time when network television was still struggling with diversity issues. Jim Breuer, who would go on to become famous for his Goat Boy character and Joe Pesci impression on Saturday Night Live, spent 2 seasons on Uptown Comedy Club, honing his craft alongside Tracy Morgan, Flex Alexander, and Deborah Wilson. Years later, Breuer would describe his time on the show as probably one of the greatest times of his whole life. Rob Magnotti, though less famous than Breuer, was equally important to the show's ensemble dynamic. Together, these 2 performers proved that comedy could transcend racial boundaries when given the opportunity, and they helped create a show that was truly groundbreaking in its approach to casting and representation in sketch comedy during the early 90s. Fact 2. Tracy Morgan beat Stephen Colbert for SNL. When Tracy Morgan auditioned for Saturday Night Live in 1996, he was competing against another comedian who would eventually become a major television star, Stephen Colbert. Both performers made it to the final round of auditions, appearing before producer Lorne Michaels and his team at Studio 8H at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. After careful consideration, Michaels made his choice and selected Tracy Morgan to join the cast, while Stephen Colbert was passed over. This decision meant that Uptown Comedy Club, where Morgan had spent 2 seasons developing his comedy skills, directly launched his career onto one of television's most prestigious platforms. The rejection was particularly memorable for Colbert, who was already used to disappointment after previously losing out on the role of Screech on the 90s teen show Saved by the Bell. But what made this audition even more interesting was that years later, when Tracy Morgan appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert in 2017, Colbert reminded him that they had both been at that same audition together. Morgan admitted he had absolutely zero recollection of Colbert being there at all. Colbert joked that they were probably too alike to both get hired, putting his usual humorous spin on the rejection. Of course, both comedians went on to have incredibly successful careers. Morgan became a Saturday Night Live cast member from 1996 to 2003, creating memorable characters like Astronaut Jones and Brian Fellow, and later starred in 30 Rock. Colbert eventually became the host of The Colbert Report and then The Late Show, but that moment in 1996, when Lorne Michaels chose the Uptown Comedy Club alumnus over the future late-night legend, remains one of the more fascinating what-if moments in comedy history. Fact 3. The show aired at midnight on obscure stations. Unlike network television shows that aired in prime time slots with massive promotional budgets behind them, Uptown Comedy Club took a much more unconventional route to reach its audience. The show aired in first-run syndication, which meant it was sold directly to individual television stations across the country, rather than being broadcast on a major network. Even more unusual was the fact that it mostly aired late at night on UHF stations, those higher-numbered channels that many viewers had to manually tune in to find. This meant that depending on where you lived in America, Uptown Comedy Club might air at completely different times and on completely different channels. In Los Angeles, for example, the show aired late on Saturday nights during the fall of 1992, with some viewers catching it after watching Yo MTV Raps with Dr. Dre and Ed Lover. This late-night scheduling actually worked in the show's favor in some ways, because it attracted a cult following among insomniacs, night shift workers, and hip-hop fans who were already up late anyway. The show's edgy humor and hip-hop aesthetic fit perfectly with the after-midnight time slot, when television networks were more willing to take risks with their programming. The UHF syndication model meant that Uptown Comedy Club never achieved the massive mainstream success of network shows, but it also gave the show a certain underground credibility. People who discovered it felt like they were part of an exclusive club, staying up late to watch something that their friends might not even know existed. This obscure distribution also meant that many comedy fans completely missed the show during its original run from 1992 to 1994, only discovering years later that future stars like Tracy Morgan and Jim Breuer had gotten their start on this late-night hidden gem. Fact 4. A legendary hip-hop DJ was the house DJ. Most sketch comedy shows have a house band or a simple soundtrack playing between segments, but Uptown Comedy Club wanted to do something completely different to reflect its hip-hop roots. The show hired DJ Scratch, whose real name is George Spivey, to serve as the resident DJ throughout the show's run. This was not just any DJ grabbing a paycheck, but rather one of the most respected turntablists in hip-hop history. DJ Scratch had won the 1988 New Music Seminar Battle for World Supremacy DJ Championship, establishing himself as one of the best scratch DJs in the world before he even turned 21 years old. By the time Uptown Comedy Club started taping in 1992, DJ Scratch was already the official DJ for the legendary hip-hop group EPMD, having been introduced to them by the late Jam Master Jay of Run DMC. His powerful cutting and scratching techniques were heard on numerous EPMD tracks, and he had even begun creating the track Funky Piano for their album Business as Usual. His presence on Uptown Comedy Club brought an authentic hip-hop credibility that other comedy shows simply could not match. Between comedy sketches and stand-up performances, DJ Scratch would perform on the turntables, keeping the energy high and reminding viewers that this was not just another comedy show, but rather a celebration of hip-hop culture. After his time on Uptown Comedy Club, DJ Scratch went on to even greater success in the music industry. He produced Grammy-nominated hits like Gimme Some More by Busta Rhymes and has been responsible for over 40 gold and platinum albums throughout his career. The fact that Uptown Comedy Club had someone of his caliber as the house DJ speaks to how seriously the show took its mission of blending comedy and hip-hop culture into something completely new for television. Fact 5. It launched 4 major sketch show stars. Television history is filled with shows that launched one major star or maybe 2. But Uptown Comedy Club accomplished something truly remarkable by serving as a springboard for 4 performers who would go on to become major players on 2 of the most successful sketch comedy shows in television history. 2 cast members from Uptown Comedy Club, Jim Breuer and Tracy Morgan, went on to join Saturday Night Live, while 2 others, Aries Spears and Deborah Wilson, became regulars on Made TV. This made Uptown Comedy Club one of the most successful talent incubators in comedy history, despite the fact that many people have never even heard of the show. Jim Breuer joined Saturday Night Live in 1995, just 1 year after Uptown Comedy Club ended, and became famous for his Goat Boy character and his spot-on impression of actor Joe Pesci during his 4-year run on the show. Tracy Morgan joined SNL in 1996 and stayed until 2003, creating beloved characters like Astronaut Jones and Brian Fellow before going on to star in 30 Rock. Meanwhile, Aries Spears joined the cast of MAD TV in 1997 during its 3rd season and became one of the longest-serving cast members in the show's history, appearing in 198 episodes over 8 seasons. Deborah Wilson also joined MAD-TV and became known for her incredible versatility and impression skills. What made this even more impressive was that Uptown Comedy Club only ran for 2 seasons, from 1992 to 1994. In just 2 years, the show managed to identify and showcase 4 performers who would go on to define sketch comedy for the next decade. The show's format, which combined stand-up, sketches, and hip-hop performances, gave these comedians a unique training ground that prepared them perfectly for the demands of live sketch comedy on shows like SNL and MAD-TV. Fact 6. The host died tragically young at 41. Monteria Ivy, who served as the host of Uptown Comedy Club during its entire first season, died on December 13, 2001, at the age of just 41 years old. The cause of death was diabetic shock, a sudden and tragic end to the life of a talented comedian, writer, and radio personality who had made significant contributions to comedy and African-American humor. His death shocked the entertainment community, as Ivy was still in the prime of his career and had so much more to offer the world of comedy. 3 years after his death, Ivy received a touching tribute from one of comedy's biggest stars. When Chris Rock recorded his stand-up performance at Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C. for his special Never Scared in 2004, he dedicated the entire special to the memory of 3 people who had been important in his life. Those 3 people were his father, Julius Rock, Stan Sandler, who was the father of his friend Adam Sandler, and Monteria Ivy. The fact that Rock placed Ivy alongside his own father in this dedication speaks volumes about the impact Ivy had on Rock's life and career. Ivy had served as the announcer for The Chris Rock Show, and the two had developed a close friendship during their time working together. The dedication in Never Scared helped ensure that Ivy's contributions to comedy would not be forgotten, even though his life was cut short so tragically. For fans of Uptown Comedy Club who remembered Ivy's charismatic hosting during the show's first season from 1992 to 1993, the news of his death and Rock's later tribute served as a bittersweet reminder of a talented performer who left us far too soon, but whose influence on comedy continued long after his passing. Fact 7. The host was a Dartmouth graduate and best-selling author. While many people might assume that Monteria Ivy was simply a comedian and television host, his background was actually far more impressive and intellectually accomplished than most viewers realized. Ivy was a graduate of Dartmouth College, one of the most prestigious Ivy League universities in America, where he studied before launching his career in comedy and entertainment. This educational background set him apart from many of his peers in the comedy world and gave him a unique perspective that he brought to his work on Uptown Comedy Club and beyond. But Ivy's intellectual accomplishments did not stop with his college degree. He became a prolific author, co-writing 7 books with his longtime friend and comedic partner, Stephen Dweck. These books explored and celebrated African-American humor with titles that ranged from the straightforward to the provocative. The pair wrote Snaps, Double Snaps, and Triple Snaps, which collected examples of the ritualized insult game that was featured regularly on Uptown Comedy Club. They also wrote books with more humorous titles like You're So Fine, I'd Drink a Tub of Your Bathwater and Baby, All Those Curves and Me with No Breaks, which showcased their ability to capture the playful, flirtatious style of African-American vernacular humor. Perhaps their most ambitious work was The Field Guide to White People, which took a humorous but insightful look at cultural differences from an African-American perspective. The duo also wrote The Big Book of Black Humor, which served as a comprehensive examination of comedy in the Black community. In addition to their writing work, Ivy and Dweck co-hosted a radio program called Sports Funk, which aired on WFAN-AM in New York. This combination of education, writing talent, and performance ability made Monteria Ivy a true Renaissance man of comedy, even if many viewers only knew him as the friendly host of a late-night sketch comedy show. Fact 8. Tracy Morgan had a bizarre on-stage costume. Among the many memorable characters and sketches that appeared on Uptown Comedy Club during its two-season run, one of the most distinctive and bizarre was Tracy Morgan's recurring character, who wore one of the strangest costume combinations ever seen on a sketch comedy show. Morgan would come out on stage wearing bike shorts, the kind that cyclists wear for long rides, paired with a matching bike hat. He also wore a little backpack on his shoulders, completing the look of someone who had just rolled off a bicycle. But the strangest element of all was the cigarette, which viewers remember as a Cool brand cigarette hanging casually out of his mouth while he performed. The visual was completely absurd and made no logical sense, which was exactly the point. Here was this character dressed like he was ready for a bike ride through the city, but with a lit cigarette dangling from his lips, creating a contradiction that was both funny and memorable. Viewers who watched the show during its original late-night run in the early 1990s remember this character vividly, with one fan recalling that Morgan would come out in this outfit to participate in the Yo Mama joke competitions that were a regular feature of the show. The combination of the athletic cycling gear with the very unathletic habit of smoking created a comedic dissonance that stuck in people's memories decades later. This kind of bizarre character work showed Morgan's willingness to commit fully to strange comedic concepts, a quality that would serve him well throughout his career. The bike shorts character demonstrated that Morgan understood the power of visual comedy and was not afraid to look ridiculous in service of getting a laugh. This fearless approach to comedy would become a hallmark of his later work on Saturday Night Live and 30 Rock, where he created equally memorable and strange characters that audiences loved. Fact 9. Yo Mama contests were actually the dozens. One of the most popular recurring segments on Uptown Comedy Club was a competition that many viewers remember as the Yo Mama contest, where comedians would face off against each other, trading insults about each other's mothers. These competitions would get the audience roaring with laughter as the insults became increasingly creative and outrageous. Viewers remember classic lines like, "Your mama's so black. When I look at her, I think I'm asleep. And your mama's so fat. She went outside wearing an X jacket and a helicopter landed on her back." But what many viewers did not realize was that this segment was not just random insult comedy. It was actually based on a traditional African-American verbal game with deep cultural roots. The segment was properly called The Dozens, an insult-filled street game played primarily in the African-American community that has existed for generations. The Dozens is a ritualized form of verbal sparring where participants trade increasingly elaborate insults, usually about each other's family members, particularly mothers. The game has its own rules and traditions, and being good at playing The Dozens requires quick wit, creativity, and the ability to think on your feet while under pressure. It is considered both an art form and a rite of passage in many Black communities, teaching young people how to handle verbal challenges without resorting to physical violence. By featuring The Dozens as a regular segment on Uptown Comedy Club, the show was not just creating entertaining television, it was preserving and celebrating an important piece of African-American cultural heritage. At the end of each segment, the audience would vote on which comedian had delivered the most devastating and creative insults, crowning a winner for that episode. This democratic approach turned the ancient tradition of The Dozens into interactive entertainment, while also introducing viewers who might not have been familiar with the game to this important aspect of Black cultural expression and verbal artistry. Fact 10. An Emmy-winning TV legend produced it. When people think about Uptown Comedy Club, they usually focus on the young, hip-hop generation of comedians who performed on the show. But the person behind the scenes producing the series was actually a television legend from a completely different era. Bob Banner served as the executive producer of Uptown Comedy Club, and his involvement represented an unlikely but fascinating bridge between old-school variety television and the new wave of hip-hop-infused comedy that was emerging in the early 1990s. Banner's credentials in television were absolutely impeccable. He had won a Primetime Emmy Award back in 1958 for his direction of The Dana Shore Chevy Show, which he also produced. That was more than 30 years before Uptown Comedy Club even existed. During the 1960s and 70s, Banner went on to become one of the most successful producers in television history. He was the executive producer of The Carol Burnett Show, one of the most beloved and successful comedy variety shows in television history, which garnered 23 Emmy Awards during its run. He also produced other major variety shows and specials, working with legends like Gary Moore, Perry Como, and Frank Sinatra. So what was this Emmy-winning producer of classic variety shows doing working on an edgy, late-night sketch comedy show filmed in Harlem that featured hip-hop artists and the dozens competitions? Banner's involvement showed that he understood comedy was evolving and was willing to bring his decades of expertise in variety television to help shape this new format. His production company, Bob Banner Associates, gave Uptown Comedy Club a level of professional polish and production value that many first-run syndicated shows lacked. The combination of Banner's old-school television craftsmanship with the fresh, raw energy of the young comedians created something truly unique in television history. Fact 11. The cast rotated hosting duties in Season 2. During the first season of Uptown Comedy Club, which ran during 1992 and into early 1993, Monteria Ivey served as the host for every single episode. His presence gave the show consistency and a clear focal point, as he would introduce segments, interact with the cast, and keep the energy flowing throughout each episode. Ivey's charismatic hosting style helped establish the show's identity during that crucial first season when it was trying to find its audience on late-night UHF stations across the country. However, when the show returned for its second season, the producers decided to make a significant change to the hosting format. Instead of having one person serve as the permanent host, the second season switched to a rotating system where different regular cast members would take turns hosting episodes. This meant that one week Tracy Morgan might be hosting, the next week it could be Jim Breuer, and the following week perhaps Flex Alexander or Deborah Wilson would take the reins. This rotating host system created a completely different dynamic for the show compared to its first season. The decision to rotate hosts had both advantages and disadvantages. On the positive side, it gave each cast member a chance to shine in the spotlight and showcase their individual hosting skills and personalities. It also kept the show feeling fresh and unpredictable, since viewers never quite knew who would be hosting from week to week. On the other hand, the loss of Monteria Ivey's consistent presence meant that the show lost some of the cohesive feel that had characterized its first season. Different hosts brought different energies and styles, which could be either refreshing or disorienting, depending on the viewer's perspective. This format change in Season 2 demonstrated that the producers were willing to experiment and try new approaches, even while the show was still finding its footing in the competitive world of late-night syndicated television. Fact 12. It featured major hip-hop acts as musical guests. While most sketch comedy shows in the early 1990s would occasionally feature musical guests as an afterthought or a way to fill time, Uptown Comedy Club made hip-hop performances an integral and essential part of its format from the very beginning. Every episode featured musical guests, and these were not minor or unknown acts trying to get exposure. The show regularly booked some of the biggest and most respected names in hip-hop during a period when the genre was exploding in popularity, but was still struggling to get mainstream television exposure. The list of artists who performed on Uptown Comedy Club reads like a who's who of early 1990s hip-hop. Das EFX, the duo known for their unique fast-paced rhyming style, and their hit single They Want EFX, appeared on the show. Gang Starr, the legendary hip-hop group featuring DJ Premier and Guru, brought their jazz-influenced boom-bap sound to the Harlem stage. Pete Rock and CL Smooth, one of the most respected producer and MC combinations in hip-hop history, performed their smooth, sample-heavy tracks. Even Mary J. Blige, who would go on to become the queen of hip-hop soul, appeared on the show during the early stages of her career. This integration of hip-hop performances was revolutionary for a comedy show at the time. While MTV's Yo! MTV Raps was showcasing hip-hop videos and Showtime at the Apollo featured musical performances, Uptown Comedy Club was one of the first comedy programs to fully embrace hip-hop culture as a core element of its identity. The show did not just book hip-hop acts as guests, it created an entire aesthetic and atmosphere that celebrated hip-hop, from having DJ Scratch as the house DJ to featuring the dozens competitions to booking underground and mainstream hip-hop artists alike. This made Uptown Comedy Club a pioneer in bringing hip-hop and comedy together on television. Fact 13. Aries Spears started at age 14. Long before Aries Spears became one of the longest-serving cast members in Mad TV history, appearing in 198 episodes over 8 seasons, he was a teenage kid performing stand-up comedy in Harlem. At the remarkably young age of just 14 years old, Spears performed his very first stand-up comedy set at a venue called the Uptown Comedy Club, which was the actual physical comedy club in Harlem that eventually gave its name to the television show. This means Spears was performing at the club years before the TV show even existed, establishing himself as a comedy prodigy before he was old enough to drive a car. According to Spears himself, that first stand-up performance at age 14 consisted primarily of doing impressions of famous people. Specifically, he has recalled doing impressions of soul singer James Brown and actor Jack Nicholson, two wildly different personalities that showcased his range even at such a young age. The fact that he was able to perform impressions well enough to get laughs from an adult audience in a Harlem comedy club demonstrates that Spears had natural talent that went far beyond his years. This early start gave him a significant advantage over other comedians, allowing him to develop his skills and stage presence during his teenage years. By the time the Uptown Comedy Club television show started taping in 1992, Spears was 17 years old and had already been performing comedy for 3 years. Although he was not a regular cast member on the TV show like some of the other performers, his connection to the Uptown Comedy Club venue and community meant he was part of the same comedy scene that produced Tracy Morgan, Jim Breuer, and Deborah Wilson. This early exposure to professional comedy in Harlem helped shape Spears into the skilled impressionist and comedian who would eventually thrive on MAD TV, where his celebrity impressions became one of the show's most popular features. Fact 14. Flex Alexander was discovered by Salt-N-Pepa's DJ. Before Flex Alexander became a cast member on Uptown Comedy Club or went on to star in his own sitcom One-on-One, he had a completely different career in the entertainment industry that had nothing to do with comedy at all. Born Mark Alexander Knox in Harlem in 1970, Alexander got the nickname Flex as a teenager because of his incredible dancing abilities. He would perform in New York nightclubs, showing off acrobatic dance moves that left audiences amazed. His dancing was so impressive that it earned him that permanent nickname, and he never went back to using his birth name professionally. Alexander's big break came when he was discovered by DJ Spinderella, the DJ for the legendary all-female hip-hop group Salt-N-Pepa. Spinderella recognized Alexander's talent and brought him on board to be part of Salt-N-Pepa's dance troupe. For 3 full years, Alexander toured the world with Salt-N-Pepa, dancing on stage at concerts and appearing in their music videos. During this time, he was not doing comedy at all. He was purely a professional dancer and choreographer. In addition to dancing for Salt-N-Pepa, he also choreographed routines for other major artists, including Mary J. Blige and Queen Latifah, establishing himself as a respected figure in the hip-hop dance community. It was only after his 3 years with Salt-N-Pepa that Alexander made the transition into comedy, making his stand-up debut in 1989 when he was 19 years old. His natural charisma and stage presence from years of dancing translated well to comedy, and he eventually landed a spot on Uptown Comedy Club. The show became his television debut in sketch comedy, and from there he went on to acting roles in sitcoms and movies. But without DJ Spinderella discovering him in a New York nightclub and giving him his start in entertainment, Flex Alexander might never have ended up on Uptown Comedy Club at all. Fact 15. The show eventually landed on BET. When Uptown Comedy Club finished its 2-season run in first-run syndication in 1994, many shows in similar situations simply disappear forever, becoming forgotten relics of television history that only exist in the memories of the few people who happened to catch them during their original airings. But Uptown Comedy Club managed to avoid that fate thanks to Black Entertainment Television, better known as BET. which eventually began airing repeats of the show in reruns. This second life on BET was significant for several reasons. First, it meant that people who had completely missed the show during its original late-night run on obscure UHF stations now had a chance to discover it. BET had much wider distribution than the random collection of local stations that had originally aired Uptown Comedy Club, so the show was suddenly accessible to millions of viewers who had never even heard of it before. Second, the move to BET made perfect sense thematically, since the show had always been centered on African-American comedy and hip-hop culture, which aligned perfectly with BET's programming mission. The BET reruns also meant that a new generation of viewers could discover the early work of performers who had gone on to become famous. By the time BET started airing the show, Tracy Morgan and Jim Breuer were well known from Saturday Night Live, Ari Spears and Deborah Wilson were stars on MAD-TV, and Flex Alexander was starring in his own sitcom. Viewers who knew these performers from their later work could now go back and see where they got their start, watching them develop their comedy skills in this groundbreaking but largely forgotten show. The BET reruns helped ensure that Uptown Comedy Club would not be completely lost to history, giving it a legacy that extended far beyond its original two-season run on late-night syndicated television.